So welcome back everybody after the break, and we're delighted to take you on this virtual journey into our next session. So we're going to transport you into the future now. The next panel looks at how can we future-proof aviation, and tackling the elephant in the room, we have Viren Joshi of AirFinance and his panel. So they're going to look at making aviation, or how can we make aviation more resilient, more prepared, and more sustainable. Viren, without further ado, I'm going to hand over to you to introduce your panelists and get the ball rolling. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you very much, Lorna, for that. Really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to moderate the panel. So thank you again. And I thank all the panelists who I will shortly introduce. So interesting topic. Some may view this as an impossible task. How do you actually future-proof aviation, or for that matter, any sector or industry? But I think what we can do today is at least bring to light some areas of improvement, education that can identify ways and means to bring in some shock absorbers to the industry. Now, a little bit of context. I live in Canada. We have two seasons. We have a construction season and then we have winter. Construction season means a lot of potholes and the cars get destroyed. So using that analogy, you know, how do we bring this aviation industry a way to absorb these potholes or avoid the sinkholes, right? So that's the topic. That's what we're going to talk about today. Let me start with introducing the panel very briefly and ask each of them to say a few words about themselves and their background. So we've got Bernie Burns, founder and president of B2 Aviation. Michel Buffet from Yacht and Aviation Finance, professional Credit Suisse. Yosef Hafiz, vice president sales and marketing with NASJet commercial. And lastly, we have Zoe Layden. So let's start with you, Bernie. You're on mute.
Of course. Welcome to Zoom. Welcome to 2020. Absolute pleasure to be here, Viren. Thank you for the introduction. Thank you, Lorna, for allowing me this space to be on this panel. Bernie Burns, originally a kid from New Jersey in the United States, found that love of passion when I was very young that we all share. But my background has been interesting. I've worked for two fractional companies that were manufacturer backed, and I've also worked for a flight department, Fortune 5 flight department. So I bring a unique background to B2 Aviation, which I started in 2012. And the premise for starting that company was simply to reinforce experience back into flying privately. So can't wait to speak with the panel today.
Thank you. Zoe.
Hello. Thanks for introducing. And my name is Zoe Layden. My background is in aviation insurance in London. And like Bernie, my accent derives from the East Coast. Just to set everyone's mind at rest, this is not a British accent. Some people like spend the whole time trying to figure that out. But I've been here for many, many decades now. Worked in Lloyd's of London and the international insurance market here. Largely working with aviation risks. And so what I am working with right now is a specific niche risk that assists business aviation in remaining profitable, pandemic or none. So we can talk more about that.
That's great, thank you. Let's turn to Yosef, please.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Good morning, good evening, wherever you are around the world. I'm Yusuf. I work for NASJet. Basically, we're a private business aviation company which manages a bunch of private business jets in Saudi Arabia, based in Riyadh, and been with the company for about 16 years. And it's been exciting times, let's put it that way. It's been challenging this year, but we're looking forward to the future. Let's put it that way.
That's great. And lastly, let's turn to Michel. Thank you.
Thank you. Also, hello, everyone. I'm pleased to be here. My name is Michel Buffin. I'm running the aviation and yacht finance business at Credit Suisse. I'm with the bank since 2001, so quite some time in the aviation business since 2007. Before, I was working in a large blue chip company. I actually have an engineering background with an MBA. And I'm based in Switzerland, so the accent, if you're asking yourself, that's a Swiss accent.
That's great. Appreciate it. Thanks, everyone. Thank you, panelists. So let's begin. We've kind of ironed out a few areas of discussion, and as you can all imagine, this is not a simple elephant that we're trying to tackle in the room. So we've got five, I think, areas that we'll talk about. And so let's start with this. First question to the panel is, how has the pandemic changed our industry? I mean, what has brought it to light, the challenges that we've been that are the underlying issues and opportunities that have been created? Here, I'm thinking about the new client base and demand. So let's start this off with Bernie, please, if you can lead the discussion.
Sure, absolutely. Well, first of all, I don't think I'm saying anything revolutionary when I say that COVID has proven to be a huge shot in the arm for proving the benefits of private aviation. I think everybody in the room knows that part. The thing that I find interesting is simply that it sped up the transition to what we need to do for the future much quicker. Much like across the world, there are elderly people who are now used to buying their groceries online and through an app. It sped that process up a lot quicker. So did aviation. And I'm interested in this new client. Here's our opportunity to reinforce our industry in ways that I don't think we ever have since, going back to the 50s and the 60s. I'm not sure if we've kind of grown as the industry kind of built, but now's our opportunity to really build it for the customers of the future. And I think I see a few unique things with this new client. Sure, we're going to keep our traditional clients as well, but this new client, the new entrant to this market, wants different things than the traditional client did. They're interested in stability. They're interested in experience over what we refer to as traditional luxury. And they're also interested in uncomplicated products. We as an industry do a great job of complicating things. So I think this is a really great opportunity for business aviation. We just have to do the right things to steward it to make sure it's profitable and successful for us.
Thanks. That's useful. I think, Joseph, why don't you go next?
Yeah, I agree with Bernie. Wherever you are around the world, I mean, the same rules apply. Simple wins in the end. And clients nowadays, even though you think of Saudi Arabia, ultra high net worth individuals owe a lot of money, oil wells in the backyard. That's not the case anymore. People who own Gulfstream G650s, Boeing business jets, you name it, they're looking to cut back on costs. They're expecting us throughout this pandemic. It's been our biggest challenge to look into ways to cut costs that we've never looked into before in the past. And I think this is what's opened up our eyes to new ways to be more efficient with the way we operate as a private business jet company. We've been doing this for 21 years. I mean, we inherited the business from NetJets. We started out as NetJets Middle East, and we've evolved. And I think what we're going to see is a new trend. People want flexibility. People want to do things the way they want to do it, as long as it fits in the model, and as long as we can add it, for example, their aircraft onto an AOC or whatever it may be, it's going to happen. So, but flexibility, simplicity is what wins in the end. This is my opinion.
Michelle.
Yes, maybe for us as a bank, it's a little bit more difficult to say, what in detail the demands are of the clients. But what we see is that there are clearly people who might not have flown privately before, that they all of a sudden consider doing it because of the restrictions, and they don't want to share their space with 100 other people in an aircraft. Even if they fly first class, they still, at the airport, they're all together. So that we see people who all of a sudden are interested in buying an aircraft, and even though they are first time buyers. So I think in a way, this is also an opportunity for our industry to gain new clients, to convince these clients that this is a great thing, and then also to keep them after the crisis. So they buy an aircraft, or charter clients, they remain charter clients instead of flying first class in a normal airline.
Yeah, definitely. And Zoe?
Yes, what I was hearing the other panelists say, which is about the new profile of the people flying and new expectations of the world as it stands in this unusual circumstance we found ourselves, that we're going to find ourselves in for a little while yet.
Mm-hmm.
And people are, I was just talking to someone prior to this, talking about, well, when do you think it, for example, the pandemic will lift? When can we do what we want to do? And her comment was, well, I think this is till April, and this is what I'm going to do. So as opposed to lamenting what can't be done right now. And that's what I think the world has come to. What can we do now? Because it's a waste of energy to try to control things that you can't. And that's where what I do comes in, is about controlling what you can control, saving costs that are right in front of you that you can save, not worrying about the money that is too far away to catch up with. And so that, I think, is a different theme, or it's a reinforced theme. Also, I think people have been, whilst we can do this online, and it's really a great tool in the toolkit, it doesn't replace being in person.
Mm-hmm.
Nuances of meeting in person, getting to know people is, that we can't wait for.
Totally agree. This is very unusual for me as well. And that discussion, actually, your last point is a great segue into the second area that I'd like to explore. And that's from an operator's perspective. I think two things really matter, and that is cost containment and profitability. So as they're making these key decisions in this environment and going forward, and what we've learned in the last 9 months, I guess, from operators' perspective, can you talk about what drives that profitability, or what can they do to make their business more sustainable into the future? Let's start with Zoe.
Okay, along the sustainability idea of controlling what you can control, a big ticket item in the world of the 2020 has been non-damage business interruption. And I segue with that because people know the term, because it's been on the front page of the FT a lot, and many of the UK newspapers about insurance. And what is very, very little known is that you can actually buy a form of non-damage business interruption for business jets. For when you have an AOG, when a business jet company has an AOG, and for a third party or Part 91 first. And the money expended on getting another aircraft at the last minute hits the bottom line directly. And it's one thing that I've been, with my insurance background, trying to promote in the industry, that this is a way to use the insurance, which is the insurance industry, which is normally not something people like, it's not the most exciting aspect of what you do in your aviation world, but it's a necessary one. And this isn't just necessary, this can actually save you money on your bottom line. So that's the type of control what you can control. That's specifically where I get involved. It's called JetSure. But I think if you take that premise and try to apply it at the rest of the businesses, where else are those things happening that we're not grappling with?
It's useful. Thank you. Joseph, let me turn to you and ask you, how do we, on cost containment or profitability, how do we improve or suggest or bring areas of improvement for the operators in trying to secure a more profitable business? What can they do on that side of the coin?
That's a very, very good question. And I think we need to go back to the basics. Our clients basically are our number one asset, wherever you are, whether it's in the Middle East or anywhere around the world. Keeping them happy, keeping them satisfied, keeping them with you within your organization, I think that's the key to success. I'll give you from experience how we run our business here at NASJet. We generally focus, or we used to focus, on fractional ownership. We've learned over time, that was inherited from NetJets. We've learned over time that owning the asset was not the solution. It was managing the asset for us was the solution. And I think what helped us get through this pandemic and hopefully, at least show some type of profitability, even if it's break even, we'll be happy. Because managing the asset, there's less risk on the operator, if you will, but there's a need to perform. Our clients expect us to perform and give us a really good service, give us that value-added service that they deserve, and the group discounts that they enjoy, whether it's on insurance, whether it's on maintenance, whether it's on operation, and so on. So I think what we're going to see for the next 10 years is that clients are going to be educated. They know what they're talking about when they buy these business jets. They're going to appreciate what Zoe mentioned earlier about buying some type of insurance which can protect for these type of pandemics, which is we never think of in the beginning until we experience. And they're going to fly more privately. We've had clients who we've been approaching for the past 10 years who are very well qualified. However, they never thought of flying privately. Now they're changing their mind. So I think that's what we're going to see down the road, and we're going to see an increase in business and an increase of aircraft coming in, and hopefully keeping those clients happy in volume will help us increase our profitability.
That's good. Yeah, so you can see that the shift in new clients, the more demand, increase in demand, operators are going to increase their business and profitability and cost containment on the other side. So Bernie, some more thoughts on that, please.
Yeah, well, let me first say that this is the therapy session for 2020 that I needed. So I love the thoughts from Zoe and Yusuf. But this pandemic did two things for me. It awakened me in a way that made me really review where our industry is. I'll speak for the U.S. and I'll speak from a charter broker perspective. When the pandemic hit, one of the first actions taken by most of my colleagues was to get the bailout, to take advantage of the resources. And I'm not here to debate whether that was the right thing or not to do, but it showed that our industry was in a place where our profits were very shaky. We don't have a standard. So I think my thoughts to this discussion would, while it lies directly, the crux of it lies with what Zoe and Yusuf said, it's at the customer. We as an industry have to create a standard where we're not lowballing each other, where we're not trying to fight each other to the bottom and pin our clients against us. We do a really great job of, oh, I can get this price for a charter flight, $500 less. Well, we shouldn't do that anymore. Financial services works in a space, works with our similar client, and yet their profits are phenomenal. So I feel like there's a little bit of a fear that we've just inherited over generations in this industry, where we have not said, this is what private aviation is, this is the cost of it, and build upon there. So I think that it just takes a lot of soul searching as an industry at this moment for us to create that standard.
That's useful. Thanks. And Michelle, from a banker's perspective, what are your thoughts on this?
You know, just to add on what was said before, it's of course, in such situations where there is too much supply and not enough demand, then of course there is a risk that prices drop significantly. It's not much you can do, but except that to make sure that your costs are under control already before you hit the crisis. And I think that is what I see everywhere when we have, and that's not directly related to the pandemic, when we do have clients who are in difficulties, and then we talk to the operator, and then we find out they have sometimes, millions of outstanding invoices, which is for an operator indeed a big problem. So I think managing the cost, and that's not necessarily keeping personnel costs lower, so that of course you have to watch as well, but really managing the cost when you have an aircraft that you operate and the client is not paying on time. I think in the good old times, if they ever existed, maybe pre-financial crisis, it was a fair assumption that this is a rich individual who will always pay eventually, sooner or later. I think nowadays this is not the correct assumption anymore. So we see operators struggle because they don't closely manage those costs. And other operators, I think that we see are hit badly by the crisis are the ones who actually own aircraft and hope to make money by chartering them out. That is typically a very difficult business model. I think there are only few who do that. There are even less who are profitable that business model. So I think that's quite a difficult one, but of course it might be nice when you actually manage. But managing cost also from client, I think that's a key point that we see are important, and also to survive such a crisis, because that's originally the topic of this panel. What can be done ahead of a crisis? And I think that's certainly very good if you manage to do that.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, from a banker's perspective, the the due diligence changes because the type of customers have changed as well. It's not just the high net worth individuals anymore, right? It could be the middle income letter customers. And so you've got to analyze it a little bit differently. So I appreciate that's a really good point. And let's move on to the next topic. And I think the next one's very interesting. And we talk about future proofing the industry. You can't have that discussion without thinking broadly about the environment and the carbon footprint. And so to that point, you know, we've seen the engine manufacturers change their product type to become more fuel efficient. The GTF engine by Pratt & Whitney. You've got the manufacturer of the aircraft as well, the airframe, changing the dynamics and the engineering to make it more fuel efficient as well. So turning to the business jet market, the question for the panel is our industry equally prioritizing the environment? What can we do in the long run to make sure this is a sustainable industry with a lower carbon footprint? Let's start with Michel, please.
Yes, I think this is actually a very important topic now, as everybody talks about COVID. You know, this is, has kind of disappeared, but I think sooner or later this will come back. And I'm not entirely sure if our industry already puts enough efforts in this topic. Because so you might argue, and I think that was what happened in the past, the absolute emissions, carbon emissions of private jets is not substantial. I read once a number of 0.4% of global emissions. I don't know if this is true, but it's relatively low. You might argue, okay, there are other industries who pollute much more, so why should we care? But I think the risk that we have is that, it's excellent target for activists. We have these rich individuals or top managers who fly around in their business jet, creating up to 20 times higher CO2 emissions per mile flown compared to the average passenger in an airliner. And if now the pressure is increased on the average people that fly, in Europe we talk about extra taxes per each ticket or so, then these people all of a sudden say, now I pay so much more on my EasyJet ticket, it doubles in price or whatever, and these rich guys, they still fly wherever they go. So this might sooner or later create a big pressure, and this industry should really be ready for that, because that could really be a big problem. And unfortunately, it's not so easy to solve. In cars, you can switch to electric, but for aircraft, that's not the solution. So the solutions are more complex. So I think new engines, that's all great, and that has to be done. But I think the problem will not be solved with that. And solutions are more like hydrogen is one as a topic, and also synthetic fuels is a topic, but these are all far away, and I'm not sure if there are enough efforts in these areas, which are done in particular by private aviation, by manufacturers or so. So I think there is still a way to go until we really are there where we should be, and also where the public expects us to be.
Yes, I think that's really useful. And Joseph, let me turn to you and ask you from a private aviation perspective and the customers that come to see you. Is this something that's important to them? Because, excuse me, obviously to change the industry, it's got to also come not just from the top, but from the bottom being the customers need to make a shift. So thoughts on that?
That's a very good point. If you want the honest answer, the truly honest answer is most clients that purchase business jets don't talk about it with us. I agree with Michel. We need to start somewhere. We need to start discussing this. We need to keep the momentum going, because it is a very hot subject. It's an important subject to bring up. But do charter clients or do aircraft owners, if you will, and I'm talking about those maybe that are here in the Middle East from dealing with them, do they necessarily ask the question before they purchase a jet or before they get on board? No, they look at costs, like Bernie said earlier. Okay, everybody's fighting for the best deal on the charter price. This is what they're looking for. Now, manufacturers, on the other hand, we operate probably 8 different types of aircraft, from a Boeing 767 all the way down to a Citation XL. Manufacturers are doing their part. There's still a long way to go, in my opinion. How we can see that as operators and as the owners may look at it as well, they look at fuel burn. So obviously, the more efficient an aircraft is, the less carbon footprint it's going to put into the environment. So I think this is really what clients are looking at as far as aircraft owners. I'm not talking about charter clients, but aircraft owners, operators as well. If they own aircraft, we're not big on owning aircraft. We're big on managing aircraft. But I think there's still a long ways to go. We need to talk about it more. We need to discuss it more. We as operators probably need to bring it up more with our owners as well and bring it to their attention.
Thank you. Thank you. Let me turn to Zoe, and Zoe, maybe you can have a few thoughts on that and see if there's any role to play for the government. I mean, the governments are going to, my sense is, bring in regulation to the industry at some point too, right? I don't know if you have any thoughts around that or related.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm more of an observer of this phenomenon in our industry than a driver of it. Though I do have some comments in that role, in that, for example, last year I had the pleasure of attending a very large business aviation conference in Geneva, and then one in the States later on in the year. And the atmosphere about this subject in the 2 conference halls in the opening, remarks couldn't have been different. Because in the States, I think the aircraft owning can be akin to owning, a car to some people. It is a mode of transportation, because you can't take the train. I heard someone this morning saying you can't take the train in Texas from here to there in 2 hours. You can't be in Paris, like we can be in a whole different country in 2 hours from London. And in certain land masses, that's never going to happen for you. In order to facilitate your business, you need this. So there's a very different cultural MO going on about the subject in just those 2 places that I chose, because I was both there last year. And then I think that the government's putting on, I think the market, making it all more accessible, making fuel less prohibitively expensive, making the actual vehicles that run, the manufacturers making the however it's hydrogen, electricity, whatever. I know battery, investment in battery storage life is huge. Making all this more financially accessible will encourage the changes. I don't know that simply taxes will. We saw that with the charging zone in London. They put this tax on and people just pay it, because they want to go there. Yeah.
Again, it's consumer driven. I agree with you. Yeah, consumers will drive that bus a lot. Bernie, thoughts?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I mentioned before I had 2 really awakening moments during the pandemic. This was the second. The idea that the skies over Asian cities were clear. The idea that the rivers ran clear in Venice. That really impacted me pretty hard. And I recognize that private aviation doesn't necessarily have a direct impact on that, but it really spoke to what us as humans have an impact on this world. So again, my theme, I think, for this panel has just been this idea that this is the opportunity that presents itself to us where we can actually progress faster in the industry than we expected to. And I think that sustainability is one of those areas where if we take it in our control, we'll have a much better outcome. Lewis Hamilton, one of the best drivers in the world, F1, has vowed to get rid of all of his gas-powered car collection and his private jet. He's got a I think he's got a 604, Challenger 604. So that will be the trend. This new entrant that comes into our industry, call it maybe 10 years from now, because I do understand that nobody's really having the conversation from a charter or an owner perspective unless it benefits them cost-wise. But call it 10 years from now, we're going to find ourselves in a position where it'll be unfashionable to fly privately. It'll be looked at completely as a sustainability excess. So here's our opportunity to get in front of it, which we don't do that often. And I know that people are making headway now, but here's our opportunity to get in front of that and show that as a benefit to our new clients.
That's great. That's great. Thanks, everyone. Let me shift the direction a little bit more focused to both the operators first, and then we'll talk about the manufacturers. So starting with the operators, and keep in mind a near-term solution and a long-term solution if you can. So what can an operator or operators in general do today, and then perhaps future-proof themselves in the next few years? We've talked about quite a few different topics, including insurance, cost containment. So just quick highlights from each of you, and I'll start with Joseph, please.
Yeah, I think for me to understand the question, you're looking at what we can do to cut back on costs in general. Is this the question? So just to clarify that. Yeah. You know, we've given it a lot of thought over the past 6 months, and I think we're going to continue to think about it and continue to progress on this subject. In general, we are quite unique here in Saudi Arabia as a private business aviation operator, and we also own an airline. So we have about 30 aircraft within our airline. It's called FlyNAS, and NASJet is the private business aviation part of the business. Now, what we've seen to cut back on costs in general is not cutting the manpower, thank goodness. It's more looking at ways, how can we as a company cut costs with our vendors, approaching them, saying, okay, can we renegotiate our agreements, our deals that we have together, whether it's power by the hour programs on the engines or on the avionics, you name it. I think that's really having the understanding with our vendors, because we're getting a lot of pressure from our clients to do this. So it's not only us driving this, but it's our clients coming to us saying, cut back on costs, look at ways to cut costs, get discounts wherever you can. So re-looking into those group rates, having a fleet of 20 airplanes gives us a little bit of purchasing power, whether it may be on fuel, on maintenance, on insurance, you name it, and just tackling each one by one, and asking those vendors to support, and believe it or not, you will find wonders sometimes. There is a little bit of wiggle room here and there with the suppliers that provide us our services. And I think just keep on turning over every single stone. I mean, we won't find them all, but we're going to continue to look at each one individually and try to cut back on cost. At the end of the day, you know, I had somebody the other day approach me, one of our ops guys. He said, what difference does it make if we cut you know, here a little bit or there? I says, it makes a big difference for our clients. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, our clients are coming to us for a reason. We're giving them an added value where there's a discount involved. Rather than them doing it with company Y or company Z, let them come to NASJet and get this benefit. This is the value added service that they're actually looking for, if you will. So I think in general, what we need to see, and sorry, this is actually one of my clients calling me. So, but anyways, he's gone to voicemail. And again, this gentleman who just called me has a Gulfstream G650 based in Saudi Arabia. And you won't believe how much they're looking into cutting costs. And this is an ultra high net worth individual, a multi-billionaire. And they're all looking at cutting down on cost. And I think the pressure is on us to perform and really to do better. And those that will do it and will cut costs will survive in the end, hopefully.
Totally agree. We need to become leaner and more efficient, right? And then that's the part of the future proofing. And I can't ask you to help me do that timing of the call. I need that. Call me in about 10 minutes when I need it. Let me ask you, Bernie, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, there was a lot that happened there that I think was great for this panel. I think what Yusuf really mentioned is the American saying. It's like, this question really is where the rubber meets the road. What do we do going forward? I do agree that cost cutting is something that we need to do. We need to do it in alignment with clients. As I mentioned before, financial services companies work with the same clients. They don't seem to be having the same issues with profitability. So for me, I think the core of this answer really goes to the efficiency, Viren, that you mentioned. It's about efficiency. It's about who are we bringing into this industry? We have, and I speak again for the US, we've been very homogenous. We haven't really sought outside thought from other industries to come into ours. And so I think the future really relies on operator strategy, and we have to create business units that speak to what the future of this industry is going to look like. So for example, if we have new clients coming in who are more interested in experience, well, experience design needs to be a part of an operator's business plan, and I don't see that happening. I don't see a strong departure away from what the norm has been, and so that, in my opinion, is how the rubber meets the road. Operators need to think about how to strategize differently, and that's going to include cost cutting. It's going to include building business units for the future, and I just don't see that much happening. And the ones that do, the ones who do create those unique strategies for the future, are the ones that are going to be successful.
Great, thank you. Zoe, thoughts?
Yes, I was thinking about the magic wand. There is none. Cinderella's not here, and but the idea that, you know, the value of the industry is so integral to people's businesses, right? That's why our the aviation industry exists, to get people connected from A to B, and that's why we exist for them. And what we want to do is be sustainable into the future. So it's like our responsibility to invest in our companies and make them there. And the integrity of our industry is what we're working towards. So as far as controlling the costs, making sure that we are there. There was mine.
The reality of working from home, we all have it. It's all good. So it's about, you know, making sure that our business is available going forward, and tightening up where we can without reducing the value of it. Yeah.
You know, it's not, you don't want to devalue while we cost cut, and that's where I'm driving at.
Yeah, it's that fine balance. It's the fine balance, right? Yeah, totally. Michelle, some last thoughts on that?
Yes. First of all, I mean, cutting cost is also very painful in banks and financial industry, and not easy, because it's always the same topic. You know, okay, you might reduce cost, but you have to be extremely careful that you don't reduce the service level, because for our product, the same as an operator, it's a service that we provide, and these clients, they have options, and we need to provide the top service. Otherwise, they are not ready to pay what they do. One thing when it comes to operators, what I noted is that some operators, they provide a great service and they're great aviators and everything. They love the aircraft and everything, but sometimes I feel that they are not as, let's say, professional managers as they probably could be. And I think for some, this might, or there might be the potential, to say positively, to also save cost, that they really introduce strict processes and controlling systems also for the cost. Not that you have the negative view would be they have this bunch of enthusiasts who manage aircraft, and clients are typically very happy with those companies, especially the smaller ones. At least our clients, they someday love being with companies that only have a handful of aircraft that they manage because they get this absolutely great service and everybody's dedicated. But ultimately, then costs are a little bit higher than they potentially could be. So I think there is sometimes potential on that side. We know that it's always, when it comes to cost, that merging companies getting bigger is sometimes a possibility. I do not think that for operators this is a real option, because I mean, what we saw was there were some operators who merged, and I think it's extremely difficult then also to merge culture, to merge the way you deal with clients. And some of the clients, they loved being with operator A because they did it exactly the way they do it. And if you now merge two operators and then you have a one size fits all approach, then clients will not be happy. They said, but before I got this, now I cannot get this anymore. And then they leave. So I think this merging is not really an option, but optimizing within the operator, I think there is some potential.
Thank you all for that. There's a lot there to digest, and I think very interesting. I think to me, the words that come out are, becoming more lean, becoming more efficient, and looking at every stone, as you said, Joseph, and also finding that fine balance, right? And not to lose your business and your culture, as Zoe mentioned. Let me turn one more time again and shift our thinking. Now, from a manufacturer's perspective, none of us are OEMs, we're not manufacturers, but if you had a message to send to the manufacturers, or if you had some thoughts on the manufacturers of what they can do to future-proof the business, because obviously they have a vested interest in the survivability of this business. So what can they do? Let's start with you, Bernie.
Sure. Having worked for two manufacturers, one, I'm going to leave the engine manufacturers to my esteemed panelists, but having worked for two manufacturers, I really actually think I'm enthused that this area is the area that I think that proves the most ability for success. Because of the healthy competition that's in that space, we've kind of seen a lot of leaps and bounds over the last few years, so that everybody kind of gets on the same standard. There were a few manufacturers that, in my opinion, were extremely antiquated, but because of global competition, they had to rise to the occasion. My theme for this panel again has been sustainability, or a large part of this panel has been sustainability, and I feel like that'll be the battleground again. It'll prove to be the competitive advantage, and so those manufacturers who do a really great job of that will be successful. At maybe 5 years ago, this conversation would have been talking about technology and the ability to be connected. While that's still a similar trait that the new entrant is really going to demand, we've done a really great job as an industry of making sure people were connected in the air with all the new products that are coming out. So sustainability will be that new battleground, in my opinion. And obviously we've beaten that to death in terms of, are they moving fast enough, or what should their priority be on it? But I actually feel really strongly that because of global competition, the manufacturers will get that race underway.
Great, thanks. Zoe, what are your thoughts on that?
Yes, I have not worked in that arena as far as the OEMs and the manufacturers go, but it seems to me from a regulatory point of view that it's going to come down to them to create the sustainable fueled vehicles, engines, airframes. That's the biggest challenge they have is. So when, for example, like here, petrol cars are going to be disallowed from a certain time, right? We're reliant on the car manufacturers. So similarly, if aviation goes in that direction, then the responsibility will be on the manufacturers to make that possible.
Yeah, thank you for that, Michelle.
Not much different from my side. I think the manufacturer who will be able to manufacture or to design an aircraft which still has the same size, the same luxury, the same range as the technology of today, and on the other hand has substantially less carbon footprint, that will be the manufacturer who will win the race. So I think that's what we will see. This is what we see from cars. People want the same size cars, they want the same performance, but they don't want emissions. So I think that will be the challenge. And if the manufacturer will get closest to this, they will win.
Thank you. And Joseph?
Thank you, Viren. I mean, from an operator perspective, and thank you for leaving me to the last, it gives me an opportunity to say something interesting. I mean, I've worked with different manufacturers, not personally, but they're side by side, where we've accepted aircraft from them at Gulfstream and at Dassault Falcon Jet, Cessna, Hawker Beechcraft, of course, when they were still alive as Hawker Beechcraft. And I found if a company wants to succeed, it's excellent customer service. This is the bottom line. And it all boils down to that. How does excellent customer service? It's after you purchase the aircraft, you're going to get the spare parts you need available. You're going to get access to technicians to fix the airplane. You're going to get access to what you need when you need it. And when you need it most is when you have an AOG on an airplane. And I think manufacturers, if they step up to the plate and they focus on serving their customers, which is the aircraft owners, the operators who manage those airplanes and maintain them, and so on, they will be the winners. My best manufacturer, probably the one that I admire the most, is Gulfstream Aerospace Corporation. We were one of the biggest Gulfstream operators in the Middle East at one point in time. Now we have about 5 or 6 Gulfstream under our management program, and a few we own as well. They, in my opinion, provide excellent customer service. They make available to us here in the Middle East. So even though they're based in Savannah, Georgia, they've opened up a facility, for example, in Dubai, where they house spare parts available for the different aircraft. They've focused on MROs in the region. So they've partnered up, obviously, with Jet Aviation, their sister company, to allow for better accessibility for the clients. And I think that's really what they need is that access, that excellent customer service. If manufacturers fall behind on that, in my opinion, that marks, the end for them. And whoever can succeed, as we do, this is our motto as well. Customers always right. Customers always number one. Whatever they say, we do, provided it doesn't, hurt them or hurt us financially. Even though we may have to take a financial hit, sometimes we're going to do it to keep that client happy. And I think the manufacturers need to do the same thing. And that's what will allow them to succeed in the future.
That's a great final thought. I might leave everyone with one more thought on it. So I wonder whether it will take a Tesla type of manufacturer to make these monumental shifts that we need to see happen, right? I mean, you've got your traditional manufacturers everywhere, but will it take a brand new entrant that brings new technology, sustainable technology, that's many, many decades out, I'm sure, and I'm sure it's in the works, but to have that as a commercial operation, but that might be something too, right? So, well, listen, guys, that was an amazing discussion. I really wanted to thank each of you, Bernie, Joseph, Zoe, and Michelle. But more importantly, I wanted to thank Quaynote for allowing us to have this discussion. It is tough, but needs to be talked about. So thank you to Lorna and Alison. And any questions, I was looking out for them. We didn't get any questions. I'm hoping you didn't see any, Lorna, either.
No, I don't think we've had any questions, Viren, but I think, to be honest, it was a very wide-ranging discussion. I think you actually anticipated and answered a lot of the questions that the audience out there had. So thank you very much for that. Thank you, Viren, for excellently moderating that session. And to Bernie, Yusuf, Michelle, and Zoe for joining us. And we hope now that you will join us for the rest of the conference. You're most welcome to do so and contribute as you can. We're actually now going into another break. So in fact, this is great timing as well, as you're practically on the dot there, Viren. So well done. So we're going into another break for 45 minutes and we'll be back at 15:35 Central European time. So check it with your local time zone as well. Thanks once again to all our panel for your thoughts, and we'll see you again soon, we hope.
Thanks, everyone, and be safe.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah,
Thanks a
Thank you.
lot.
take care.
It was a pleasure.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Take care.
Here, bye-bye.